Code for Africa is a pan-African federation of civic clubs and working with civic media. Essentially, our objective, if you want to call it an objective, is to try and work within the intersection of technology and media to try and provide citizens with actionable information. So we look at what the issues are, what are the problems, what are the pain points that the public has, and then see how we can introduce technology or even work with technology to try and address some of those problems.
So what have you found are the key things that you're facing?
The usual thing is, I mean, people have problems or they have questions or they have concerns about what everybody worries about: their children's health, their education, getting access to clean water, getting good services. But the one thing which is very different with other interventions that have been done or being done is that we always include media in any intervention. So there is the focus of trying to provide citizens with information they can use to make decisions related to education, health, or whatever. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that the media also has access to these tools or platforms that can help them tell those stories better. So there's a whole thing about giving them additional skills, tech skills. It doesn't mean you need to be everything, but at least knowing how can I use the technology available to tell that story about the person who needs water in a better way. How can I give my audiences access to information that matters to them in a format that matters to them? How do you tell the same story of no services, but in a more engaging manner, such that then your audiences get some knowledge, not knowledge, but they get the information and are able to act on that information. So you don't want to just be talking at people, you want to have a conversation. And that conversation is not what are the technological tools that are available to encourage that kind of conversation. Understanding the limitations we have in terms of not everybody is online and not everybody is knowledgeable enough to be able to then either use the technology that is there to make known their concerns. So we try and do crazy stuff. I think we do crazy stuff. Yeah. I call it crazy, but crazy interesting. Like empowering. Okay, let me just for starters, one of the things we're doing is something to do with air quality. Now, air quality data does not exist in most of our countries. It does not exist. And even if it does, it's spotty. It's very spotty. It's not consistent. Maybe it was, like in Kenya, I think they have 6 air quality sensors that have been collecting data, but that data is not accessible to the public. It's only accessible maybe to the UNEP or maybe the government. Yeah. Now, imagine a situation where we actually put together cheap, simple, easy to use air quality sensors, and then mapping them, putting them all over the city, and then getting that data. And for me as a journalist, I'd say, oh, okay, what's the kind of air in my hood? Or then you see, oh, in this, because we place them with schools or with individuals in their where they live as custodians, but that data is shared by academia, it's shared by the journalists, it's open to the public, so that they can see that actually the fact that there is that factory or maybe there's garbage being burnt in their neighborhood or something is contributing to their bad health. Now that's a story that you would otherwise not have been able to tell without necessarily having the evidence to back it up. So that when this individual or this community or this citizen then goes and says, we do not want that garbage burning in our hood, we don't want that waste disposal site in our neighborhood because it's making us sick. I mean, that's not something you'd otherwise be able to do. So those are some of the things.
That's amazing. So you're giving them tools, for example, data,
yes,
journalism skills, to enable the media to really empower
citizens. Yes. Yeah. And actually, in some instances, actually helping build up databases that do not exist. I mean, maybe here you have the company registry.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a company registry, but I do not have access to it easily. So what is one way? We actually create, we liberate.
Yeah.
We use the word liberation of data, which is held up in PDFs and whatnot, but then put it in such a way that they are accessible to anybody. They are searchable and people can access them easily. Not necessarily, Joe blog, but at least the media has access to that. They can then be able to contextualize a story when they're doing a story about, oh, okay, we've got corruption, Catherine this, Catherine that, Catherine is the director of this, Catherine is also a director of that, whereas connecting the dots and then saying, wait a minute, it's only Catherine, Catherine, Catherine everywhere. What? Then you can see you can get a better picture of a situation. You can be able to contextualize. You can be able then to say, it's not just based on this, it's actually based on evidence, which is very important, especially working in some of our countries, because when I say Catherine says, I have no evidence, and if I'm called out and somebody is unhappy, I can always use that as a point of, defense. I did not say it. Actually, it exists in your documents. It exists in your data. It exists in your records. I am not saying it as Catherine. I think Maria Ressa referred to that today when she was talking about the weaponization of social media and everything. But one of the things that came through to me in her conversation is when she says, if you have the evidence, it's one way of standing or fighting back. So again, that's the same thing we're trying to do, liberating, providing databases where none exist, creating APIs or tools or platforms that can then help you as a user, as a citizen, as a journalist, to visualize that information that is there or to be able to search.
So that's great. And I have one more question, which is, how's the reaction of the audiences and of the journalists you're working with when you're enabling them to access the evidence that previously they had no access to? What sort of response you're getting?
It's been quite encouraging. Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenge was trying to get people to see why we need to go this way. I think the way the media has been changing in the West, for a time there, I think we kind of were comfortable that we don't need to worry about certain things or go the same way. And it's true, we don't have to. We just need to learn from how the media is being impacted by technology. What I've realized, especially now, and particularly with the women, because we started a women network, women data journalists network, is the opportunities it gives you as a journalist to tell that story you've always wanted to tell and have some impact. It's not necessarily, okay, the editors may want the clickbait, but really connecting with your audiences, getting people to come back and tell you, oh, Catherine, that was a great story. Oh, you made my day, or now I know I intend to do this. Because the idea is you need to be able to, after somebody reads your story, then they need to be able, okay, so what, now I know, what do I do? Because there's nothing as, frustrating as for you to tell me my problem is this, and then you don't give me a solution or even an indication of where solutions could be, because at the end of the day, I'll make my own decision. Give me the information and at the same, so that I feel empowered. I know that, okay, maybe I need to go on the street. Maybe that's my solution. Maybe not. Maybe there is a way I can respond or ask or demand for services or for something, for action to be taken. So that's the way we look at it in terms of, we don't just tell the story for the heck of it. You tell it because if it's, obviously it's a story about people, you want them to feel hopeful. Their situation is not useless.